In the last module, we saw how the have past goes into its own form of the subjunctive when you step on a trigger. So we have the sound of aya, ayas, aya, ayamos, and ayan. So for example, she has sold it versus I don't think she has sold it. Once again, how would you translate those two? The first one is lo ha vendido, she has sold it, versus no creo que lo haya vendido, I don't think she has sold it. So here we have stepping on a trigger and the have past going into this subjunctive form. Now, the interesting thing is that this also happens when you're using the word had with the past. For example, I have seen it, but you can also say I had seen it. Now, normally for had, we would use the sound of había. So I had seen it would be lo había visto. It I had seen. And that would give us the slide of había, habías, había, habíamos, and habían. So all these are had. I had seen, you had seen, he, she, or it had seen, we had seen, and they had seen. How would you say, yes, I had seen it before? Sí, lo había visto antes. So this is all regular and normal. However, if you step on a trigger, such as I don't think I had seen it before, it then becomes no creo que lo hubiera visto antes. This sound of hubiera is had going into the subjunctive. Why? Because you've stepped on a trigger. So it no longer stays with the sound of había visto, but it goes into hubiera visto. We can put all the angles on one slide. So we have hubiera visto, hubieras visto, hubiera visto, hubiéramos visto, and hubieran visto. So these are all had. I had seen, you had seen, he, she, or it had seen, we had seen, they had seen, but in the subjunctive form after you step on a trigger. So that's what this module is all about. The name here, the pluperfect subjunctive, sounds very fancy and very impressive, but that's all it really is. It's had with the past going into the sound of hubiera. At this point, it's very important not to get lost in the woods. Let's look at the following two slides. Here we have our regular have past, which is fine when everything is regular, but as soon as you step on a subjunctive trigger, we know that this e, as, a, hemos, and an transforms into this aya sound. So this is for have. I have seen, I have talked with, I have driven, and so forth. The same thing happens with had. So regularly we have había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. That's when everything is normal. However, if you step on a trigger, this había transforms into the sound of hubiera, and you can see it go all the way down the line. Hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, and hubieran. The exact same thing is happening. On one side you have with the past, I have seen, and on the other side you have had, I had seen. So these two slides are very important. They're important because they will help you to avoid confusion. Remember, it's just have and its subjunctive on one side, and had and its subjunctive on the other side. So you have hubiera for had as the key sound and aya for have. So let's put this into real action now. To say in Spanish, I wish, or I wish that, or hopefully, it's all one word in Spanish, or two words. It would be ojalá que. Notice the strong H sound here. You can really hear that Arabic influence. ojalá que. So ojalá que means I wish that, or simply hopefully. Let's use it. First of all, how would you say I had seen it? Lo había visto. Now, I wish I had seen it. This sound of ojalá que is a trigger for the subjunctive. So this had will have to go into that hubiera sound. Try to do it. Ojalá que lo hubiera visto. I wish that I had seen it. Ojalá que lo hubiera visto. How would you say I had bought it? Lo había comprado. Now say I wish I had bought it. Ojalá que lo hubiera comprado. For the phrase I had met her, we're going to use the verb conocer. How would you say that? La había conocido. Now, how would you say, I wish I had met her? Ojalá que la hubiera conocido. What about I had told them? Les había dicho. I wish I had told them. Ojalá que les hubiera dicho. Let's switch to a different trigger. How would you say, I had already told him? Ya le había dicho. Now say, it's good that I had already told him. Es bueno que ya le hubiera dicho. I had seen it. Lo había visto. How would you say, as soon as I had seen it? Tan pronto como lo hubiera visto. Let's try yet another trigger. How would you say, I had done it before? Lo había hecho antes. Now say, it was important that I had done it before. Fue importante que lo hubiera hecho antes. I had seen it earlier. Lo había visto más temprano. Now say, it was a shame that I hadn't seen it earlier. Fue una lástima que no lo hubiera visto más temprano. How would you say he, she, or it believed? Creía. So, he didn't believe would be what? No creía. How would you say, I had been here before? Había estado aquí antes. Now let's use the pluperfect subjunctive and say, he didn't believe that I had been here before. No creía que no hubiera estado aquí antes. So, no creía, he wasn't believing, he didn't believe that I hadn't been here. Que no hubiera estado aquí antes. How would you say, I had spoken with you? Había hablado contigo. Now say, she didn't believe I had spoken with you. No creía que hubiera hablado contigo. So, what a fancy name this module has, the pluperfect subjunctive. You could think of it as the had subjunctive. So we have a have subjunctive where the sound goes into haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, and hayan. And the same thing happens for had. So we have the sound of hubiera, hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, and hubieran. Make sure that you spend some time paused on these slides to really familiarize yourself and to try to get it as clear as you can in your mind. When you have the word have with something in the past and you step on a trigger going into haya, same thing happens with had. So here it is regular again, but if you step on a trigger, it transforms into this exotic sound going all the way down the line. Hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, hubieran. We'll practice the other angles in the upcoming videos. Welcome to part 2. It's time now to work all those other angles. So make sure that you have these sounds clearly in your mind. Hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, and hubieran. Onto those you simply tag the past participle of any verb that you like. So let's take the verb ver, and the past participle meaning seen is going to be visto. How would you say, I wish I hadn't seen it? Ojalá que no lo hubiera visto. I wish you hadn't seen it. Ojalá que no lo hubieras visto. I wish Pablo hadn't seen it. Ojalá que Pablo no lo hubiera visto. I wish we hadn't seen it. Ojalá que no lo hubiéramos visto. I wish they hadn't seen it. Ojalá que no lo hubieran visto. Let's mix things up a bit more by using some sentences. How would you say, it was lucky that you had already paid the bill? Fue afortunado que ya hubieras pagado la factura. I don't think you had met him before. No creo que lo hubieras conocido antes. I was hoping he had already sold it. Esperaba que ya lo hubiera vendido. I doubt it had happened before. Dudo que hubiera pasado antes. I doubt we had met everyone before leaving. Dudo que hubiéramos conocido a todos antes de irnos. I don't think they had spoken with him before. No creo que hubieran hablado con él antes. I don't think I had met her before. No creo que la hubiera conocido antes. I doubt you had driven in a city with traffic like that before. Dudo que hubieras manejado en una ciudad con tráfico así antes. I was hoping he had been able to visit you. Esperaba que hubiera podido visitarte. It could be that we still haven't discovered our true potential. Puede ser que todavía no hubiéramos descubierto nuestro verdadero potencial. I didn't believe you had been there before. No creía que hubieras estado allí antes. It's incredible that you hadn't met him before. Es increíble que no lo hubieras conocido antes. It was a shame that they hadn't invited us to the wedding. Era una lástima que no nos hubieran invitado a la boda. Let's dive into part 3. The word if can sometimes trigger the subjunctive. Let's look at this example sentence. If I had told him the truth, I wouldn't be in trouble now. We have this combination of if with would. It doesn't matter if it's a negative or not. So if and some kind of would. This would translate as si le hubiera dicho la verdad, no estaría en problemas ahora. So if I had told him the truth, here you can see the subjunctive being used for had. Si le hubiera dicho. Now we have the would. No estaría. I wouldn't be en problemas ahora, in trouble now. Let's look at another example. If I had studied more, I would have passed the exam. Again, you can see an if and a would in the structure of the sentence. So we have one clause here, followed by a would or a would have clause in the second part. Translated, this would be, si hubiera estudiado más, habría pasado el examen. If I had studied more, I would have passed, habría pasado el examen. Another one. If I had been there, I don't know what I would have done. This would be, si hubiera estado allí, no sé lo que habría hecho. If I had been there. Again, you can see the subjunctive, si hubiera estado allí. I don't know, no sé, what is lo que I would have done, habría hecho. You can even reverse the order and it will still work. For example, I don't know what I would have done if I had been there. You're still having a would and an if in this structure. So that would be, no sé lo que habría hecho si hubiera estado allí. Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this idea or this type of sentence where if triggers the subjunctive. We have an if and a would or a would have, either way. Let's look at something slightly more complex. If you had listened to me before, the situation would be very different now. Again, you can see that same structure in the two clauses, if and would. Si me hubieras escuchado antes, la situación sería muy diferente ahora. If you had listened to me, the situation would be very different now. If they had seen you with me, they would have been very annoyed. Again, we have if and a would or a would have, either way. Si te hubieran visto conmigo, habrían estado muy molestos. Let's do one more for good measure. Actually, you might try to do this yourself, and I'll give you more practice afterwards. If we had known the truth, we would have told you. How would you say that? Si hubiéramos sabido la verdad, te habríamos dicho. So, if we had known the truth, we would have te habríamos told you, dicho. Here we have the to you up front. Let's try a few more. If I had left earlier, I would have arrived on time. How would you say that? Si me hubiera ido más temprano, habría llegado a tiempo. Remember that we're using the verb irse. So we have this reflexive pronoun, si me hubiera ido más temprano, habría llegado a tiempo. If she had asked me for the money, I would have given it to her. Si me hubiera pedido el dinero, se lo habría dado. Here we have the it to her, se lo habría dado. I would have left much earlier if I had known there would be so much traffic. Me habría ido mucho más temprano si hubiera sabido que habría tanto tráfico. If I had known her number, I would have called her. Si hubiera sabido su número, le habría llamado. I would have bought it if it hadn't been so expensive. Lo habría comprado si no hubiera estado or sido, either way will work, tan caro. It would have been rude if we hadn't stayed the night. Habría sido grosero si no nos hubiéramos quedado la noche. Here we had the verb quedarse, so we had to use it reflexively. If they had seen it, they wouldn't have believed it. Si lo hubieran visto, no lo habrían creído. If I had known before what I know now, I would be a very different person. Si hubiera sabido antes lo que sé ahora, sería una persona muy diferente. If we had been there, I don't know what we would have done. Si hubiéramos estado allí, no sé qué habríamos hecho. If they had spoken with me earlier, I wouldn't have had any problem. Si hubieran hablado conmigo más temprano, no habría tenido ningún problema. You wouldn't have sold it if you had known the consequences. No lo habrías vendido si hubieras sabido las consecuencias. I realized that some of these sentences were quite tough, but we are at the end of level 9 after all. The reason they were a little tricky is because you had to mix and match different verb tenses together, and compound tenses especially. So we have things such as this one, where you have to use the would have, habrías, with the past participle, and also remember to use the pluperfect subjunctive. So you can see that we are mixing complex or more types of complex verb tenses together in the one phrase. Now, if you found it troublesome, as always, just repeat the video a few times, but I'm going to be doing a lot of videos to reinforce everything that we've covered so far. So we're going to be revisiting all of this over and over again from different angles, different translations and sentences, drills and exercises, so that over time it'll gradually become more and more concrete, and you'll be able to clearly differentiate between a would have and a pluperfect subjunctive, even when it's in the same sentence or the same phrase.